So I have this part up here again, but now we'll get to like the actual argument itself. We're almost there. Josh, you want to just hit the other light? I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference, but maybe make things a little bit better. So we're good with this. Everyone's caught up there. So next part we're getting to would be the actual argument itself. So this would be more of like the body of your argument. And this would be where you could get different kinds of things coming in. I think we mentioned facts, personal stories, testimonials. The big thing, and I kind of mentioned this to you yesterday a little bit when I was talking about how sometimes people fall in love with statistics. The main thing is make sure you don't always go to the same type of evidence over and over and over again. You want to try to come up with the best examples available. You want to be a little dynamic in the sense that it's not predictable as to what Josh is going to use every time he does his argument. So Mike can't prep for, okay, there's going to be a testimonial from some fancy guy, and then there's going to be a couple statistics or whatnot. Tyler, did you figure out ethos?
Yeah.
Why do you have 4 ethos? No, because you lied to me.
He's the water boy.
No, just sit.
So you playing or you're not playing?
I'm confused.
Oh, I'm off. Okay. He's water boy.
Butler student section is coming up.
I still feel like you lied to me.
Did you actually believe that?
Feel free to refer to him as Game Boom. I mean, I knew you weren't focusing on baseball because all I ever saw you do was like pinch run.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I didn't see that because I required you in the battery box, and I never like witnessed.
Did you go to the championship game? I struck out 3 times.
I was at state. I wasn't at the Whitby. I was at state.
Hey, but you guys
Down in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand why though, based on what you just said.
Baseball is.
Okay.
Hey, you still won. I know what
Do you know Mrs. Kane?
Yeah.
She went to Redland.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 friends there.
So she was rooting against you.
She went to Redmond.
They have a lot of pride about their tradition, I guess.
Pride, tradition, excellence. So best examples available, variety of evidence. This would be a big one here. Address the opposing viewpoints, and that'll be something that we really kind of focus on throughout. One of the best ways to establish an argument is to not only advance your point, and this would be especially if you're going first. So Brooke and I are going to do a debate. She's speaking before me. She makes her point, and then she goes, now, the opposing side is probably going to mention yada, yada, yada. But keep in mind, and then she mentions her point, she already is repeating all the stuff that I didn't get to say yet. I put my head down and change. Because I don't have anything else, because I don't have a variety of evidence or best examples. You do want to make sure you don't misrepresent opposing claims. That's a logical fallacy straw man, which we'll get into later on in the year. So just try, it's one thing to attack the points of your opponent, but don't attack the credibility or try to say that they are misspeaking or misrepresenting what their ideas are. It's not attacking the character, but we're going to attack the argument and follow a logical progression in the sense that everything simply kind of makes sense. The closing to this is a little bit longer. The epilogue, it's in 4 parts. Good news, I went with white ink on the little sticky note, so it makes it a little bit easier to read. So we're taking a look at the epilogue. We got 4 little sticky notes here. So this would be the end, when you're kind of doing your final hurrah. Most, and don't get worried about this, and this has nothing to do with next week at all. Next week, when you do your speech assignment, you're going to be talking at most for a minute. Most formal speeches are probably in the 5-minute range that you would be speaking, and you can think of that as like a minute to introduce the topic, 3 minutes to really argue it, and then a minute for my closing. So if you break it down into parts, it's really not all that bad. So this has nothing to do necessarily with next week, but in that last minute, in that closing, so kind of like a checklist that you want to do. Make the audience well-disposed towards yourself and ill-disposed towards your opponent. So reinforce what you did well, reinforce what your opponent did not do well. Most speaking assignments, when you're up against the person, it's going to be back and forth. So Corey introduces his topic. then Corey does his argument, then Mike does his argument, then Corey does his closing, then Mike does his closing. So you're not even speaking for like 5 minutes all in one chunk. It's this little back and forth between a couple people. So if Josh put his foot in his mouth, Addy will have the opportunity to remember when he said, and that can kind of be part of that ill disposed. But you're not going to go, with Toby didn't comb his hair today, so therefore he is not a good representation of this argument. You saw him chewing gum. You're attacking the argument. You're not attacking the credibility necessarily of the person, unless they said something really terrible. Then you got to go for it. Number 2, magnify or minimize leading facts. Obviously, or hopefully obviously, you would want to magnify your leading facts. You would want to minimize the opponent's leading facts. And there's a difference between like minimizing them and misrepresenting them. It's not going to be, well, global warming is really not that bad, it's not getting that much hotter. Yeah, it's definitely still kind of getting warmer and things like that. But with global change, global climate, it was 2018, I think it was 2016, it's 2015 or 2016. Carbon emissions globally. So carbon emissions is one of the issues that kind of causes global warming. Carbon emissions decreased for the first time in, I don't know how many number of years it was, I don't know, 2015, 2016. So folks going that climate change is not a big deal, this was something to really hang your hat on. Global emissions is going down, temperatures are going to cool off, everything is fine. And of course in the next 3 years we've had record heat and all that kind of stuff. I don't expect you to know why, but anyone want to take a guess as to why in, I think it was 2015 global emissions decreased? Because that's a big point, because it's always been rising. Any guesses?
Because countries started making policies about stuff that causes turbulence.
Similar to like Paris Accord and climate change. Okay. Makes sense.
We just started using them all.
Okay.
Gas or fossil fuels.
Awareness and all that stuff.
And
If you're on the PA Turnpike and you're going towards Somerset, like you're going towards Redlands, so to speak, but in Somerset, what kind of energy source? Anyone know? There's windmills, and from the turnpike you see like 5 or 6 of them. We went to the Flight 93 Memorial first time this year, so we're off the turnpike. I did not realize there were like 60 windmills in Somerset. There's like, you see the 5 or 6, but when you get off, and if you're on Route 30, they are everywhere. So there's clearly a spread of like wind energy and all that stuff.
And when I was in Massachusetts, my grandparents are lucky. We sometimes drive across this big solar panel, and it's just like 20 to 30 acres of just solar.
And they're certainly becoming like more widespread just even within neighborhoods and things like that.
Honestly, it's so very often what Josh said, there's enforcement more laws in places like Germany and that, so maybe just like moving with energy. Switzerland is all of that, so instead of little organizations coming together, it's bigger like countries.
And rather, there's a difference between suggesting something and legislating it. You have to. And so like with car companies, you have to be at certain, miles per gallon, EPA and all that kind of stuff. All good guesses. However, sadly, I don't think any of them are correct. The chief reason why in 2015 carbon emissions went down is there was a certain country who was in an economic downfall / crisis, and there was not nearly the amount of factory output in 2015. China. Everything's better now. Carbon emissions have gone back up. And so it seems that it was kind of like that recession within China, that there just was not nearly the amount of stuff going on. Now, all the things that you folks have mentioned have certainly helped with limiting, the amount that would be taking place. But a way, if I'm doing a conversation where you don't have to worry about global warming anymore, carbon emissions are going down in 2015, minimizing one of my leading facts would be mentioning, well, China did have that recession in 2015, so they weren't putting out nearly the amount of product as was in other years. That's a way to minimize something that I've done. You haven't misrepresented me. You haven't called me an idiot or a moron. You haven't made fun of the way I look or anything like that, but you minimize one of my leading facts. And if you can kind of do something like that in a closing, that's certainly going to be beneficial. Now, you don't always know what that argument is going to be, and you might not know some things off the top of your head, but the idea of trying to at least minimize their leading point would be good. This would go to pathos, because we're talking about emotions. You want to try to excite the required state of motion in the hearts of your hearers, your listeners. So, if you were trying to get them to be scared about something, kind of go back to that fear. You're trying to have them to unite with your school spirit, pride, tradition, excellence. You go with that kind of thing again here at the end. Go back to that emotional connection that you were hoping to try to establish. And again, within the closing, the idea is you've already done all these things. You're simply just kind of trying to reinforce it one more time. And then the last one, refresh their memories. And it seems kind of simple, but remind them of your point, remind them of your evidence, remind them of things that the opponent said that maybe might not work in that person's favor. Refresh their memories about all the points that you've been trying to get across. You do those 4 things within your closing, you're probably putting yourself in a pretty good shape. You don't need to write, well, yeah, I do want you to write this part down. I'm sorry. Please do write this down. This will be the last thing we write. Aristotle's purposes of debate, and I can zoom in on them. There's 4. He looks at debate as a means of defense. So when Jeremy comes at you, arms flailing, punches flowing, you can go, wait a minute, you're playing debate. It'll be a means of defense. You might get a black eye, but at least argue the point. I'll explain what we mean by that here in a second. You're able to see both sides. Part of me doesn't like using this phrase, see both sides. Any idea why in relation to an argument? I think it's kind of, well, I'll let you guys try first. It's kind of limiting. And there's a phrase, false dichotomy, where you make an argument where you're either for us or you're against us kind of thing. And generally, yeah, you can have 3 sides, you can have 4 sides, you can have 12 different viewpoints about something. So we say see both sides because most of the time, Billy versus Ashley, or whatever the case may be with both sides, but there's always more than 2 viewpoints, for example.
If a speaker of the opposing side says it, it's kind of double back on their statement. Try not to let them hey, I see your side.
If you mean if you're trying to use both sides?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the idea, the context with this would be by you and me having a debate, the audience is able to see both sides. So it's not that you have to incorporate this into your debate. You might address the opposing viewpoint, but it's kind of like a rebuttal paragraph. But it's not that, no, at the end, you don't have to do and Mike's argument was just as good as mine, everyone, so if you vote for him, it's okay. No, you don't want to do something like that. But it allows for the audience to see both sides. But it could have cases where there's be 3 or 4. You prevent fraud and injustice. And then the last one is it's an opportunity for the public to be instructed or educated. Instruction for the public. Can you think of any places in today's world where an argument or a debate is able to accomplish all 4 of those things instead? I mean, we can see both sides of an argument if, Nina is arguing against Josh, but I don't know if we're really preventing fraud. Could be some instruction taking place. I don't know if the defense is really going to be there. Yeah, a courtroom would work. If you're accused, there is a trial. There are 2 sides, prosecutor, defense. It's a means of defense if you're the person charged with something. If everything goes as it should prevent fraud and injustice. And in the courtroom, unless it's a really high-profile case, the public is able to come in. In theory, Senate would work too, government would kind of work with that, but the public isn't always able to come in. But certainly you're able to do debate, see both sides, prevent fraud and injustice so far as laws and things like that. So you might not think of, hey, all these things are always going to work in everyday life, but there's certainly places within the modern world where that still works. So, all right, we're good with the introduction to rhetoric. Good news, of all the notes that we do all year long, this was the most boring of them, I think. Always start low, work your way up. You don't want to start with the good ones and then be like, all right, now, let's talk about that.
Now let's talk about
Spinny ball. While we wait for Notebook to load. Oh, not it did. You want to talk about lottery or you want to talk about Buckley?
Buckley.
Alright.
I don't think anyone goes live. I was like, alright.
Did anyone go back and like reread did anyone read the story before today? That you had, so you knew what was going on. Now you knew what was going on. Okay, so
I read it, I didn't remember.
I didn't know that was going to happen. That effect might not be there for some people. Did for those who are reading for the first time, did anyone go back and reread like the opening paragraphs after Tessie gets stoned? Take a look. Take out the text. Take a look at the story again.
I kind of knew it was going to happen once they're all going to
At the end?
Yeah,
Or at the
they were
at the beginning?
making a pile of stones.
Yeah, how the kids were making a
I
pile
was
of
like
stones.
really getting ready
That's
to kill
awesome.
somebody.
The second paragraph, the children assembled first, comma. Of course. Of course the children assembled first. School was recently over for the summer, and the feeling of liberty sat uneasily on most of them. They tended to gather together quietly for a while before they broke into boisterous play, and their talk was still of the classroom and of the teacher, Mr. Kane, of books and reprimands. Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones, and the other boys soon followed his example, selecting the smoothest and roundest stone. Which at some point, some of us are going, oh, they're going to skip rocks. They're going to all along the lake. And then, oh, no, never mind. So I think, like, once you realize what was going on for some people, you read those couple of line sentences there, you go, ooh, that's kind of gruesome that school's out, let's go get the stones. I'm wearing cargo pants, you know what that means. 6 pockets instead of 4, just wait. I have a belt, so I can load them up and everything will be okay. What else about it? So there's the obvious, okay, that was kind of terrible. But any other reactions to reading it?
It's already seemed like natural. It says like it was just how it is one of the disarray and the Dean Cloud Halloween. It just seemed
All the little public events happen here, so why would this one be kind of any different? So we got the kids, maybe. In my there we go. We'll just go with the wordness of it.
yeah,
Or-
this one just seemed like an everyday event.
I didn't spell that right. Natural. It's a
Society that's unwilling to change, even though I was talking about the summer that stopped moving. And
What's the? Well, I guess this could kind of be like a loaded question. What's the reason for them doing it? I mean, you could go, they're sadistic, but like if we can't change this, you know, we have to keep going. Why do we keep doing this?
because it's something they've always done and they never
Okay, so tradition.
It was for the harvest of their crops.
Yeah, there's the. You remember what the line is? And if we go with the crops, which would be the. Did you find the line?
Used to be saying about lottery in June, corn be heavy soon.
Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. So we need to do this to have a bountiful crop. So what would be a word to describe what they are doing? Okay? Well, I'm thinking more positive because that's certainly like we could say they're sadistic and greedy and evil people. Yes. Okay. Anyone have a?
Like a sacred?
It's a sacrifice.
It always got positive.
Yeah, I was like, it's not very positive.
Well.
Yeah, we're going to have to sacrifice. Woo!
What R would kind of go along with it?
Ritual.
What does it mean to sacrifice?
Kill
And I'm not,
somebody.
the goal is not by the end here to have you walking out and Mike going, all right, everyone, in June 27th.
Maybe 26, big population.
Mike calls out the 27th and everyone shows up 2 days early within there. If you're sacrifice, what are you doing?
It's a trade.
It's a trade, yes, and essentially you're giving yourself up for the benefit. Tyler struck out 3 times. I don't want to relive these horrific moments. Were there people on base? No one on base.
That was a weird game.
Okay.
I mean, you could pitch like 90s.
So Tyler's up to bat, nobody out, runner on second. He has his
There's 2 outs every
172
time.
batting average. This is my situation now.
Okay, I was
Tie game, nobody out, runner on second, Tyler's up. As manager, what might you have him do?
Step
Swing
into the
the
pitch.
The hit.
Take over the team.
Bunt.
Bunt. Bunt's when you go.
I
What
think
do you do
should
when
have
you
stepped
bunt?
into the pitch instead. It's more of a
advance the
guarantee.
player.
You
Like
advance the
Yeah.
player,
Like a
and the
wrist.
play itself, it's not a bunt, but it's called a sacrifice bunt. I am going to give up my at-bat, I am going to give up my out, so that the runner can get to third, gives us a better chance of now scoring.
You know, it's a fun thing. I always
Hopefully not with 2 strikes.
Except for Wednesday.
So, in one way, you could take a look at this as being a ritual. It's a sacrifice that would be able to get things better for a community, and there's some tradition behind it. But of course, what has happened, well, it has become sadistic, it has become violent, it has become something that people just do, it seems, for the sake of doing. So that original intent has kind of disappeared. But if you do look, all throughout human history, sacrifice is something that people have always done. But it certainly doesn't seem to be necessary in this case. Anything else? Details that you noticed or anything like that?
What, like did they redraw in the region? I don't understand how it works.
So, because you said was it you or Tyler mentioned about having a question before the quiz? Was that going to be like your main question?
Yeah.
So what you have is you have all the families now. So there would be a piece of paper in the box, 1 paper per family. Who goes up to pick up the paper? The head of the household. So it's very much a patriarch society where the father goes to get it. There are some exceptions. Do you remember any exceptions where the father does not go to get it? Yeah, Dunbars. So mom goes up to get it instead. And then towards the end, for the Watsons, the boy has to go get it. And almost combined characters, Old Man Summers. Mr. Summers says, don't be nervous, take your time.
Was his dad the one that drew the turn?
The assumption would be that his dad was a winner in previous years or the year before. The father is no longer there, so the oldest male, the oldest son, now goes up and gets it in its place. So a representative of the family would pick it. So the Hutchinsons win. They get the spot. What you now do is you redraw only for the Hutchinsons. So there's 5 people in the family, they'll put 5 slips, one of them will have the spot. So if it's a family of 7, is the quote-unquote winner, there'd be 7 pieces of paper. If it's only a married couple without kids, there would only be 2, 50-50 chance of it happening. if old man Warner wins, it's just him. I guess you can call it at that point and keep going with it. But that's why they go twice to figure out who is the representative family. But everyone within the family is open game. It's not the adults, so they can be the kids. So Bobby Martin is stuffing himself full of rocks when it's possible that he potentially could be the one who.
What I didn't get was that they just didn't care that their mom was dying. They saw that they didn't have a spot and they turned around and smiled and laughed and not me.
Well, and they even give the Hutchins here's a couple pebbles you can go in and go with it. How do they call the names?
Alphabetical.
They're in alphabetical order. And I think the names are fascinating that they use. The first name, anyone remember the first? Adams has to be first. Why does Adam have to be first?
That's not really you.
Adam's from a religious standpoint, the first. So how long has this tradition been going on? Always. Adam's involved, and we go all the way, to the Zaninis. Zaninis. If Adams nationality, you think of Adams, that's a very, English, Anglo-Saxon name. Zanini. Delacroix,
French.
which is now said Delacroix. It's been perverted. Martin, Dunbar. You have all of these different heritages, all of these different people are included, but they all partake in it. The value idea is something that we're going to kind of talk about throughout the year. We all have different values, and that's something that becomes important when it comes to debate. We'll talk about this stuff next week. No homework unless you still owe me some of the signature. That will just be due on Monday. And your survey. Candy or did you? Yeah. My cousin has the other issues with the surveys. I obviously didn't get
I still fail to see how sacrifice is viewed in a positive annotation.